Welcome to Dysfictional, the RPG-focused podcast where we're also afraid to ask the barmaid for a refill. I'm Randy the Random Generator.
I'm Tukey, former academic, gone ranger.
And I'm Ginger, professional film industry victim. I don't know what is so intimidating about that barmaid.
I mean, it's really just the anxiety of talking to another individual, I think.
But talking to other people is fun.
What's the D&D equivalent of DoorDash?
Magic?
Centaur delivery. I don't know. I got nothing. Centaur service. Oh, there we go.
If they were going to introduce DoorDash in D&D, would it be coming out today?
Like one D&D?
Oh my God.
I guess the official is the 2024 Player's Handbook, but whatever.
What's one D&D?
It's the republishing of the Player's Handbook.
Wow, that sounds exciting.
It is. And everyone, for the most part, got buffed. Maybe a few nerfs, but I think everything looks pretty good. Assumptions, because we're going off of a lot of information that we don't physically have yet. But, we'll have it soon. I mean, as of this recording, we don't. But as of the release, we will.
Yeah, and I'm sure you would have read it entirely. And then Ginger and I will ask you questions about it.
Piggyback. Yeah, exactly. As it always happens.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you are the DM, so it's kind of your job.
It kind of reminds me of my World of Warcraft days when I was a warlock helping the Moonkin Druid learn how to play a Moonkin Druid.
Wait.
Yeah, it made sense at the time.
Yeah.
So am I correct in my understanding that this is not actually a new edition? This is a rule update for 5th edition?
Yeah, there's a rule update, clarities, balance changes, things like that. The big reason why they didn't want to have it as 6th edition or 5.5 is they wanted to be backwards compatible. I think a big reason for that is that 5e is so well received, so big and approachable by people that it was better to keep all the material able to continue on rather than starting over again like previous editions.
And for people who are still sort of new to D&D and are maybe coming in 5e, this is the first time there's been a major rules update since 2014. Is that correct?
Yeah, because most of the stuff like Tasha's and stuff is additives to those. There's been clarities that, like one example quickly was magic action is now a thing. Beforehand, spells and features that felt magical were all lumped into actions. Now with that clarity, you have something like action surge, for example, which specifies you can't use a magic action, which is great because then you can separate these features from it just being, I don't know, like a martial action versus that, and just having a little bit more balance with the clarity and not this general action that can sometimes break things like Action Surge kind of did, being able to cast 2 spells at once.
I mean, the more clarification, the better for you, because then there's less times we'll be mad at you for not agreeing with our crazy interpretation of a rule.
Oh, there'll still be plenty of that. There's always going to be something that people come up with that isn't in the rules.
It seems also like a lot of very popular homebrew rules made it into the new rule set. For instance, like the healing potion, if you administer it to yourself, it can be a bonus action. But if you administer it as an action, you can just roll the max on it, which seems cool. So it's like they sort of incorporated a popular homebrew rule, but like added an additional step.
I don't know if that part's in there because I know that was one of my actual homebrews. But the big change that they did was that using a potion of healing was always an action.
Right.
Now it's a bonus action, which is a popular rule. You're correct that people did do, but there was no clarity on administering it to someone else. So they've also added that it's a bonus action as well to administer it to someone else.
Yeah, which is great.
Yeah, because I could have easily ruled that it's, let's say you're using a bonus action and then their reaction to drink it or something like that. But, then it's, I don't want to use my reaction just to drink a potion, but I'm about to die. So maybe.
My character just always keeps an open healing potion in their mouth. So then when they fall backwards dying, it goes into their mouth.
Yeah, it's at that point, it's a free action.
Right. See, that's the long game.
Yeah.
I just had like an inspiration for a whole new race, and it's a race of like pelican people that can hold things in their pelican pouch. They could just like fill it up with healing potion at the beginning.
It's just a slosh of the potion juice.
Or the goodberry tooth. Instead of a cyanide pill tooth, a goodberry tooth.
Yeah.
Yes.
That'd be really hard not to accidentally pop. Like someone punches you in your mouth and you just like, oh man. Well,
basically just has a portable bucket.
Yeah.
That just goes with them everywhere. A fleshy bucket.
So, you guys know about some of the updates. What are you excited for with those updates that are potentially coming out? Well, are coming out today.
Well, it's an awkward time for me to have picked a druid. But I will say the wild shape changes aren't affecting me as badly because I was not Circle of the Moon. So it'll be interesting to see how the wild shape changes make wild shape better for utility for non-moon druids. I think if I had put all that time and effort into building a Circle of the Moon druid and this had happened, I feel like I would be pissed. I'm also Gloomstalker Ranger because we're playing a Gestalt campaign, which means I'm playing two classes that sort of everyone has agreed were nerfed. But again, that one's a little bit gonna come out in the playtest because of the way the Dread Ambusher was edited and like a couple of the other initiative things. What I'm excited about is the origin feats and the fact that now the feats are giving stat bonuses as well when you take them. And that some of them you can take more than once. So I think some of those things like the initiative bonus the Gloomstalker used to have that kind of got nerfed a little bit can be made up for with like the origin feat that I chose. I'm playing a human, so I got to choose one, and then you're giving me one for my background as well. But the one I chose is going to offset that a little bit. So there are ways to offset some of the lighter nerfs. It's an awkward time to be a druid / Gloomstalker Ranger out there in the world.
You chose poorly.
I guess so.
It was a funny coincidence because I was just adding for the feats. I was just adding that. And not all feats. I think I pretty much basically said that all feats can give a plus to an ability score. And then they basically did that, which was good. And I actually preferred that separation that you had these origin feats that, yes, you can take whenever. And some of them stack, like skilled, you can take multiple times. And then they have the feats that are a little more juicy that have the stat bonuses to them, and which makes them more enticing rather than the +2, because the +2 is just boring. You can still take it, and it's better for your damage to ramp up quicker. But now most people can get a stat in 17 and pretty much guarantee that by 4th level, they would have that to an 18, which is great for them. I think the druid, I agree that at least for you, the wild shape didn't affect you. And I think overall they got buffed otherwise. The moon druid, while it did get nerfed, we all kind of like moon druids are in a weird spot where they were like extremely powerful in the beginning of the game. And then even though they kind of damage wise fell off, and the only reason they fell off is just because there aren't high enough CR beasts that really do super well at high levels, but they were unkillable pretty much. So it was a nerf that was kind of needed for them to be dropped a little bit. Same thing with paladins. They got nerfed a bit, but they were already so high above everyone else that now that's like, well, now instead of you being an A+ tier and everyone else is an A tier, you're an S tier and everyone else is like A+ to S- tier, because paladins are still really good.
Yeah, I think it's a good time for us to have just rolled campaigns.
Yeah. I mean, I was also going to mention the origin feats and the general feat changes. Origin feats because it kind of adds more importance to the early decisions, but also gives the early decisions of your character creation more power and like flavor.
Yeah. Side note, one that I'm probably going to add to an origin feat is Chef. That'd be really fun to have
Nice.
something like Chef or some of the feats that are you would probably never pick because you don't want to waste your 4th level ability score for it. That now it's a free feat and it's some of them have some good uses like skilled or alert can be pretty useful, but being able to get your flavor feed in because it's free and it's your starter thing, I think is nice to be able to put more of those there. And then I can make sure all the other ones just get a +1. Like I can't think of any that are in another book, but there are plenty that aren't in another book that now kind of would just add that +1 to it.
Right. Like that's the thing. Now something like Chef will also give you a +1, right? So it's like,
yeah,
it makes a lot of them just so much more viable. You know, obviously some feats are still going to stand out above others, but I don't know. It feels like maybe we'll get, not that there was super cookie cutter before, but it feels like this will allow some more flexibility there. The other thing I was going to say that I am excited for is the weapon masteries as well. And I know multiple classes have access to these, or most. I don't actually how many do or don't, but multiple have access, and I think there's 7 or 8 of them. Again, grain of salt right now. We haven't gone through all the rules yet, but I know a bunch of them look like a lot of fun, and they're not huge deals, right? But like one, for example, I think is slow, and it takes off like 10 movement speed from the enemy you hit. There's another one like Nick and Vex, and there's one that pushes back enemies a little bit.
Graze.
Yeah. And it just adds a lot of, again, flexibility to how you're fighting, the flavor you put into your combat, how you position yourself in combat. These definitely feel like they're just adding more and more options for people out there. And we'll see. That might benefit. These are things we're waiting to see. This might benefit some classes that maybe were weaker before, because now some of these other ones could have little unknown effects. Yeah, I don't know. Pretty exciting to see that.
I got something with I'll talk about it later in another part of this section, but I am also excited with the weapon masteries. I wish it was a little bit more to it, but we'll get into that later. For me, I think the magic action, like I said, was really great. I'm really happy about that because then I can always be like, oh, this feature, well, that's a magic action. It'd be very easy to do that and have a lot more stuff with that. Another thing I'm happy about is that the clarity with the casting multiple spells. You can only cast one spell per turn that uses a spell slot. So if like your race gave you Misty Step specifically, you can use that and still cast Fireball. If your wand or if you have the Staff of Frost and you do a wall of ice, you could still healing word your ally at the same turn. So that adds a lot of, I think, more fun with magic items and stuff that even if you have these spells, and yeah, they were already useful because they didn't take the spell slot, but now they're even more beneficial because they don't take the spell slot and you can still cast other things at the same turn. And then I like that some of the tools got a little bit of clarity on how to use them. Monks are going to be really interesting. I'm really excited with monks, though, from what I hear back with the tools, they have a little bit more clarity of like in certain uses of them, but they're still not like a great expansive list on, hey, here's carpenter tools, here's all the cool things you can make, and here's the nuances, and here's a list of components and yada yada. It's just gives you a simple DC and stuff, which I'm kind of sad about. But even having the clarity and some test DCs is great. The Dungeon Master book that'll come out, hopefully that'll have a little bit more with that stuff because that could affect the DM just as much of the roles. Incapacitated as well, I'm excited to see because that is gonna hurt now. But yeah,
I am super excited that they have finally at least started giving tools uses, because this was something that we talked about a lot in the last campaign. I took a tool proficiency and then it was like, okay, but what does it do? And there's like no guidance on what does it do? Like, what can you do with it? I have this kit. What does it do? What does it allow me to do? And it basically ended up kind of being useless because there just wasn't really any. It was like, well, I don't know if it does that. It's like, well, we have to make it up if we want, but now it's like, okay, the proficiencies sort of mean more, which is nice. And I am building into my character for this campaign massive tool mechanics because I really wanted to use it more last campaign and I didn't. And we were just homebrewing stuff because we didn't know that this was a change that was coming up. So that is actually one of the things I reworked in my build when the new info started coming out, because I'm going to plan to take full advantage of that. And so that's definitely one of the things I'm excited about. I'm also intrigued by the new exhaustion table. My last character spent a lot of time exhausted and the old table kind of sucked. And so we were using your homebrew table.
Alternative. Yeah.
Your alternative table, Randy. And it seems like a lot of people also felt like the old table sucked because now it's different. I still think I prefer your homebrew table, but it's actually kind of exactly the same except times 2, right? Like it's just, everything is double numbers, but it actually, they kind of synced it up to what you were doing. So it'll be nice to have that a little bit more streamlined as well, because the old table was just sort of clunky and very inconvenient and sort of just threw wrenches in the game for days and days at a time.
Yeah.
So
I'm also debating on which one I want to prefer, because depending on how you're exhausted, 6 days of exhaustion could potentially kill you, but mine was about 10 days or 11 days. And I mean, it could go either way. I don't think that there'd be a situation you'd reach that much. Plus, there's still not a way to remove it more than like one a day easily.
One a day, yeah.
So having more numbers makes it even harder.
Unless it's just like greater restoration, greater restoration, greater restoration, greater restoration, which is expansive.
And I got 2 quick minor excites, and then next topic. Grappling now allows dex as well as strength. There are more saves, and you don't need to roll to hit, I believe.
Ooh.
So you don't have to do the big thing, you don't have to do the opposing athletics checks. Now the target just makes a strength or dex save, which is great because most, like say like a rogue, for example, would almost always get grappled and then would very easily get out of the grapple because they can now use their dex. But I mean, you can dodge a grapple. So it makes sense for that. The other thing, I'm actually excited about the Ranger. If you're using Hunter's Mark, it's a big improvement. And I'll talk more about the Ranger throughout this whole podcast because I've got stuff on each subject of it. But I am excited that they're a little more powerful. And I think with everything else going on, they still have some good stuff. Their flavor is all thrown into one spell. And I think that's what a lot of people are more disappointed on. But so speaking of that, what are you guys least excited for? For me, artificers aren't here. You may speak now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that and be like, somebody's missing.
I get why, but it's still sad.
But that doesn't mean you can't be one.
Correct.
The artificer class did not get anything changed, right? So basically, it is not in the new book at all. So you have to retroactively integrate it into your game if you want.
The kind of hard part is like the way that these work, and I'd have to check the artificer itself, but you'd have to move some things around because, the epic boons aren't a part of them. So that had to be rolled into their level 19. And there's other things you'd probably still have to touch up
tweak
with the class. But the problem with an artificer is they can't be in this book unless you had a big list of magic items in this book as well, because a lot of their features work on magic items and other things like that. So then having a book that goes, hey, this artificer is yada yada and does all these magic items, check the next book to see what those are in 5 months. Then you're like, okay, well, I guess I can't play this then. So I understand why they didn't bring it in the book, but I'm still sad.
Yeah, I mean, as far as things not as excited for, a lot of these I'm honestly kind of mixed about. I still want to kind of see them in action, but I think everyone's subclasses are now at level 3 instead of, some had them a little earlier, which probably won't impact a lot of campaigns because a lot of campaigns don't always start at level 1. I don't know. I'm never a huge fan of making things more generic. Like everyone gets something at the same time versus before.
I have that as one of my topic points too. Go on.
it's weird because like usually I'm for flexibility. And actually this is the same point. I'll also mention like the change to the background / the races and how they get ability scores are from those, which is also now more generic. It's nice because sure, you get a lot more flexibility and creativity and customization, but then there was also sort of something fun about fitting towards things that were, for lack of a better term, hard-coded or that were set in stone. And then for the subclasses, of course, like the fact that some were different than others, it just, I don't know. It seems like there was a little bit of like natural world flavor that was lost to then improve flexibility and customization. So I'm mixed on it. Definitely want to kind of see it play out. But yeah, Randy, it sounds like you have something to add on this too.
I agree. Actually, I'm going to jump in for a second. I think the word I was thinking of when I was reading about it is like everything's very homogenous now. Half elf isn't a thing anymore. Half orc isn't a thing anymore. You can still do that, but you have to sort of do it yourself. And I think when you're talking about bringing in new players, not everybody has the will or even the capacity to imagine everything on their own. Like that's why it's a game with rules and parameters, is so you can pick things, and homogenizing everything and sort of leveling everything out. To me, like as far as everybody getting, it would be like, well, which one's the best one? Or like, which one is going to fit me the best? You'd be like, well, they're kind of all the same. Makes it a little bit harder to make a decision potentially, but also it can just be not as fun to be like, well, okay, it's all on me to decide. I guess I want to be like a halfling or like everything hinges on the background. Maybe there's not a background there that you're interested in, or maybe your background didn't make it into this book and now you have to figure out like, okay, what's my origin feat going to be? Or, you know, it's like weirdly like more work and less work at the same time. It's like less stuff to do, but it's like more creative work to make it as good as like the preset, you know, having something to go off of, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I actually have a thing for you as well. So I also wish they had a better way to do a half race, like you said. Because here's the thing with the half elf and half orc is you're still getting the features of mostly like elf, but there's nothing that you're taking from your other half. So honestly, how those worked, they're still an elf or a half orc because you're not gaining anything from your other half because there's no parameters or guidelines for that other half. So I kind of wish that they had kind of like that custom lineage, which is a way to do it, but it's not a good way. I wish they had a way to be like a hybrid one where like, hey, you can pick, let's say like this ancestry, hey, you can pick this proficiency or like language based from either of your, or like 2 languages from either of your sides, something like that. Something to give you a guide for it, but they don't. Mm-hmm. And instead of having the half elf that's mostly an elf, just now you can say it's a half, they just removed it, which is a little bit backwards too. And now it's called species, so that's a thing. But back with you, Tiki, I just said balancing, and I think for a DM, while yeah, the balancing will be interesting because everyone kind of got a boost. It'll be nice that hopefully more classes feel better at all levels of play because now barbarians have more ways out of combat to do things. There are other classes like Bard who have more ways of doing their stuff in combat, like Bardic Inspiration can be moved differently. I also had it more of a negative with the players because it's just like you said, the making them all kind of feel a little samey, and not the way that they all feel the same class, but gaining them at the same level while you probably may have made a pact that, like, let's say your parents made a pact and you were born a warlock, or you were always a part of this cleric religion, or things like that, that now you're like, I've always been kind of religious, but I never had a god that I really associated with. But now I'm kind of feeling this one out. So now I'm a light cleric, you know, it's kind of weird.
Also, I don't think that it hurts anything to have certain classes be more complicated and less complicated to play either, right? Because that feeds into the longevity of the game. If all the classes are kind of in the same note, there's no sort of like real draw to like try a class that you've been previously like a little intimidated by or something. Like if every class is basically all the stuff's the same, everybody's more or less like everyone has just the same, basically like the same spells, the same abilities, they're just called different things. It's like, okay, well then I could just be a cleric forever, or I could just be a druid forever. And it's like, whereas previous to this, I would be like, oh man, it would be crazy to like one day try to do like an artificer or something, because like that's a lot more difficult. So like I think a difficulty scale in like what they get, how powerful they are, like a breadth of power scale as well is like not a bad thing. It's like playing the game on, you know, easy, normal, hard, or like God mode. It gives it like more range as a game to come back over and over and over again and try different things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, luckily the spells at least help with that, but I do agree. I think the reason this even happened, and I think the classes features, some of their features like epic boons, which I do like that boons. I think they're really great. But like all of their subclasses being the same levels, I think the biggest reason for it is multi-classing ruined it, because third level is a very specific level. Is if you go up to 3 levels with one class, you're not going to get 9th level spells until level, actually I think you drop 9th level spells at that point. If not, you get it at level 20 while everyone else gets at level 17. So it's a pretty big sacrifice to do that. So you almost pretty much drop out on other features, and you don't get epic boons by that point as well. And epic boons seem to be pretty powerful, and they allow you to go beyond your cap, your ability scores. So again, the balancing is a part of it. And again, it's because of the multi-classing. I agree. I wish that wasn't necessarily the case, but there were like the shenanigans of just getting that one dip into the class and you gain these subclass features and these class features. And then that was everything you wanted. Although now fighters have even more to offer for a one dip. So whatever.
I feel like if we were going to, you know, throw shade on people who did like the one dip for multiple class, it would just be crazy hypocritical, because we've been playing fully Gestalt campaigns for like years now. Yeah. It's like, yeah, we want both. Why can't everybody have both? But yeah, I think the biggest things that I'm not excited about in the updates, going back to your question, was all of the things I was not excited about are flavor related, that I feel like it's loss of flavor. And so that was one of them. And I know you know what I'm going to say. The other one is I'm not excited about the changes to divine intervention. I think it makes sense. I understand it, but it's boring. It's boring. It's boring. It's boring. And I don't like it. And if I was still a cleric right now in this current campaign, I would be annoyed.
Yeah.
Well, good news.
You're like, yeah, it's the one thing where you wanted less clarity on.
Well, yeah, I mean, not just because of how you can try to be creative with the spell. I mean, we had rules for the spell, and the rules did need to be clarified, and that is fine. But I don't think that it is still even worthy of calling it divine intervention, right? Like, to me, divine intervention is like a deity is intervening. Like, that is a crazy huge moment in the game. It's almost impossible to get it to hit. And I understand, you know, the new rule, it's the new
Easy.
breakdown of it. It's you can use it all the time. You can replicate tons of spells with it. It's like, yes, it's very useful. It'll save you a lot of money on components and all of that, yada, yada, yada. But why would I want to play a cleric if there was no chance that I could literally summon my god into a battle if I just got lucky? Like, those moments are the biggest in-game like wow moments. Like, those are your epic moments as a cleric, that if that DI hits just at the right time and turns the tide of battle, like, that's the sickest moment of your entire campaign. And that's gone now. It just isn't a thing. And so to me, I felt like that kind of killed my desire to try to want to build another long-term, like a relationship with a deity. Cause like, if they're not going to, if it's just like, here's another spell you have that does something cool. It's like, yay, I already have a bunch of spells that do cool things. And yeah, that one's awesome. But I want my god to come like, pick me up in the middle of a battle and do something about it. Like it lost so much of the storytelling intrinsic to that spell to me.
It sounds like you're not happy that they clarified that for you. Anyway, I had one other one as well before we go too far into divine intervention, which I'm sure we'll come back to again. This is a minor one, and it was really just
I'll die on that hill.
It was just the surprise rule change. This is my last one here, but the surprise rule change, kind of a minor thing. I'm kind of mixed on it, where they made it now where it's disadvantage instead of potentially before where it could be a whole surprise round. It's good and bad, right? Like it makes it less harmful, so you don't have to necessarily over prepare to avoid it or to watch out for it as much as you did before. But it's also less impactful if you're planning everything and you're really working towards getting that surprise on the enemy, and then
better for the players and worse for the players.
Correct. It's definitely a mixed one, but it's still a clarification. So, but it's not like it's a minor one, not like super excited about it. We'll see how it plays out.
It also changed a lot of feats that I used to really like. We talked about alert being one of them. I do like the change to alert.
I think the new alert's way better.
Well, considering that, like, you can't be surprised is null and void now because there is no true surprise anymore. It's like, yeah, of course they had to edit that.
Yeah.
The new alert is really cool because it gives you a huge initiative bonus. And then it also allows you to trade your initiative with a willing player. And I cannot say how many times that would have come in handy last campaign. So I'm excited about that for this campaign. But yeah, that surprise round, like trying to get in and get a surprise round on the enemies, is also a really fun thing that you can sit and plan and try to have tactics about. And so I feel like this does a little bit like dull those tactics sessions. And similarly, inspiration now is just a reroll across the board, which is fine. But humans get it every day, like once a day for no reason, which makes it feel...
So do champion fighters. They get it really often.
So like, it's like, okay, I was a little confused about that. I kind of enjoyed having to earn it, but I just so happened to be playing a human this time. And I was just like, oh, I'm just going to be constantly inspired. That's nice. But yeah, I guess I'll be trying to use that reroll like every day because there's no reason not to. But again, kind of boring. Like, didn't have to work for that at all. Not sure how I feel about it. I like to work for stuff. I like to play the game,
Yeah, they potentially should have had it like maybe the same mechanic, but called something different for that. There are other things with it that...
Or just have humans intrinsically have the luck feat. Like maybe that's the feat humans get, because if you're a human and you're surviving alongside all the other adventurers, clearly you're lucky. And then you just get your one reroll a day. But yeah, for it to just be inspiration like every day, like every long rest, it kind of threw me off a little. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, I more honestly understand the champion fighters. But what do we feel like we wish was in the new book that, as far as we know, isn't? And I'll start with this one. For me, I wish the ranger features that were removed, for one, such as Natural Explorer, instead gave spells that reflected the flavor, such as like Locate Animal or Plant or Beast Bond or some sort of spell things that they always had prepared. That way, instead of it being expertise or skill, which it kind of functions somewhat similarly, but having the spells of it made it more just diverse and felt more like they were given something, because then they have a larger spell list. The other one that I think they've done really well on, but I really wish that they expanded upon it even more. I think marshals should have their own version of a spell list. Something that they could pick a number of things that they can do X amount of times per day, per whatever. And then like that'd be great because then they get to have their own extra things to do in combat aside from this nick that it'll happen regardless. I don't need to do anything extra. It'll happen, especially like Grays, that if you miss, you still can deal some damage. Cool. Love that feature. But what if I wanted to like do a cool spin move, like, or, something like that? Or what if I want to do like a leap attack? And yeah, I could say the flavor of it, but I want a mechanic with it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you already kind of mentioned Ranger. I was also going to sort of say them. I think it would have been potentially cool to see more unique change to them rather than them doing the changes that they are doing, but still going to try to give that a chance as I am currently playing one. The other thing which I learned at the start of our podcast session tonight was I didn't realize the artificers weren't changed at all. And I kind of wish they were, because in previous episodes, I've mentioned that I've never played Artificer and I was kind of looking forward to doing that.
They're so very powerful. So
They are.
Try them.
But it's a little disappointing to hear that there was just nothing changed about them. But hey, I guess I've never really played them before, so it's all going to be new to me anyway. But it would have been cool if every class was included in the changes that went out.
Yep.
I think something I wish was there that wasn't is a more official adoption of some of the extended like expansion classes. I know technically like the Dunamancy Wizard and like the Blood Hunter and like some of the other Critical Role classes are, Wizards of the Coast canon. They have their own source books and stuff, but they're still like expansions. But I feel like at this point,
in that sort of.
Yeah, I feel like at this point, everyone has lived with them for so long. And like some of the magic items are like making it into the regular books and things like that. So I would have loved to see like a full class breakdown on Blood Hunter, because some of those have been around now for a really long time. And it would have been cool to see them like officially brought in and given, the structure and everything. Although they're probably gonna stay more interesting since they didn't get sort of like leveled with everybody else, I guess. So I guess love to see about that. But yeah, just like what Tukey said, a lot of it I'm still just sort of cautiously like waiting to see how it playtests, like how it shakes out. I did want, for the record, clarification on divine intervention, but not like that.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Not like this.
Clarification,
yes. There's a lot. I want to say that I'm a little bit also intrigued to see how sorcerers work out with the new one spell slot per round, how that jives with heightened spell.
Heightened spell got changed too.
Sorry, quicken spell.
Quicken got changed too.
Yeah, so I haven't looked through all of that stuff. I will say that
I'll talk to you about it after the podcast.
Yeah, all that stuff's the kind of thing I'm waiting to see, like how it shakes out, because it could make things super lame or it could make things really great. So we'll just have to wait and see. It's a whole new world.
Yeah, one thing I think the book has done a lot, Wild Magic Sorcerers is actually a real highlight of this, is that they put a lot of the features out of the DM's hand and into the player's hand. So, for instance, Wild Magic, you get to choose what to do the D20 instead of the DM to roll on the Wild Magic table. And I think that was the intent with Divine Intervention as well, is that it's not like the DM can obviously add some more and stuff to it, but now you get to do it. And I do enjoy that, rather than you're lucky you have a DM that's pretty okay with a lot of stuff. But you could also have the DM that doesn't allow the deity to spawn down because that's too powerful.
Well, I just feel like
not everyone likes Critical Role, unfortunately.
There is a place in every game for Rule of Cool, and I feel like obviously that's up to every table.
Yeah.
But the way that they've restructured some of these things, it's like those Rule of Cool moments were available because the rules as written were vague enough to give you that leeway. And now it's like, no, you can't do anything fun with this forget it. It's like, okay, well, that is lame. And I will die on that hill and I don't care.
Well, you can die on the hill with this character that we'll create.
This is the Flash Round, where we take turns creating the bones of a character that anyone can use. If you play one, let us know who they become. All right, let's roll initiative.
12.
I got a 12.
I got an 18.
Okay. Man. I mean, we gotta roll off. You're first.
9.
You're first. Well, second. First after me.
Oh,
Wait.
so I beat you.
Yeah.
I got an 18.
Yeah, we know.
I am first.
The order is Ginger, Tukey, Randy.
Okay. For the race, I want to do a kobold.
Kobold, huh?
Rackadichu.
Yeah.
They're going to be a kobold rogue.
Of course they are.
It's okay because they are a rogue mastermind.
Ooh, mastermind, huh? That's different.
Nice. Okay. Well, then for their appearance. Okay, so for their appearance, I want them to be a red kobold. Keeping with the rogue, they'll have a cool cloak, like with a big hood on it so that they can like hide. But I want them to have big, glowing, like very, very bright yellow eyes, and a really, really long tongue so that they can hiss at things like Joanna from Rescuers Down Under.
That is very specific.
I know.
Well, for their background, a little different. I'm going to say they're an acolyte. Maybe they got kind of like mixed up with the church or something at some point. Who knows?
Oh, dear.
No, it's a good one. It's okay.
And for their personality trait, they are working on a grand philosophical theory and love sharing the ideas.
Ooh, they're a sharer.
Oh, he's like a philosopher rogue.
Yeah. Who's a mastermind?
Okay, so for a philosopher rogue kobold, who I believe has an incredibly short lifespan, I'm going to say that the ideal is truth above everything, in pursuit of knowledge.
For their bond, then, if they're philosophizing and thinking about all this, they find the ones who listen to them to be the closest. They just want to be listened to.
Are they mostly mannequins?
No, yeah.
For their flaw, so they are easily distracted by even just the thought of new information.
Like squirrel.
Yeah. Wait, what kind of squirrel? Is that a new squirrel? I've never seen that one before.
What is a squirrel, though?
Your name is Rocket? What kind of name is that?
For their item, I think that they should have a spyglass. It helps them observe things from afar.
What are they observing?
Well, it started as a squirrel, but by 3 p.m., it had been so many things.
Huh. And their name shall be Gebel. Gebul.
Well, is it a professor? Professor Gebel.
Ooh, that is a nice ring to it.
It's also kind of like a vaguely threatening name for a rogue. Like, it's like, do you hear about this one rogue? He's a professor.
I hear he's a mastermind.
He's a mastermind at something.
Your theories are right. Just gotta keep pushing them.
Good luck pursuing that PhD.
Oh, he'll die before he finishes school.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this session and want to hear more, you can find us on Twitter at dysfictionalpod for our latest updates and downloads.
Original music for this podcast is provided by Joshua Silver, the artist known as Dimanon on Spotify.
As we say goodbye for this week, remember it's always good to activate your protection against evil and good before you get to work. Never be too safe.